Hello, role-playing people! In this episode of the podcast, I have quite the confession to make. I am not the know-it-all lore master GM. I am not the world builder GM. I'm not the magic items and lists upon lists of items and gear GM. And probably worst of all, I'm not the GM who can roll with all possible character archetypes. Just like everyone else, my experience with certain characters and character goals is limited. Now, since the channel is primarily about World of Darkness and Vampire is the most played out of all World of Darkness games, let's put this in Vampire terms. I don't know all the paths of morality by heart. I don't know all the bloodline flaws and disciplines and thaumaturgy paths and sorcery paths and rituals. I don't know the whole worldwide context of the sects and clans. In most of my games, I stick to one or two cities and the NPCs within those locations, unless the game is about traveling and being on the move. So I build my sandbox and welcome the player characters to the fighting ring. That's it. I'm only human. I have so much time and this much brain power. So if there's so much I don't know, how is it I've been playing this game for a decade now, having so much fun with my groups? Well, long story short, I asked my players for help. Because, like I've mentioned in other episodes, this is not just their fun. It's everyone's fun, and it's not just the GM's work. It's everyone's work. Obviously, I'm not asking them to cram so much lore and know the system by heart. My god, this is not an exam. But most games offer the players a wide variety of character builds, concepts, and goals, and means of achieving those goals. Some of them might be in conflict with others. Some of them I might not know how to work with. I've heard this from a lot of GMs, like one is really good at world building and more linear, epic exploration and adventure. One makes memorable NPCs and is great with intrigue and sandbox games and so on and so forth. We all have our fortes. But the player characters don't always play into our fortes as GMs. So what do we do then? Censor the player? Limit his character creation options and the character choices because we can't roll with them? No, obviously not. That's extremely limiting. The GM should be capable of offering a varied menu of stories and means of how those stories play out. You can always research away, right? Going back to the books, trying to find ways of making things interesting for that player and their character, but sadly, depending on our ages and responsibilities, time is also an issue. Obviously, I want to run an awesome game for my group, letting them play whatever they want, but maybe I just don't know how to do it and I don't have the time to learn. So what happens then? Well, my solution was to ask for help from the players. If asking the players to assist with the rules and systems of a game is bad GMing, then just stop listening to me. I'm a horrible GM. Personally, I cannot account for my historical setting, the locations, the events within it, the NPCs, their personalities and motivation, magic items, if they are present in the games, current intrigues and relationships between the NPCs, and in a game like Vampire, different player character archetypes with different motivations, merits and flaws and moralities. My god, different paths of moralities which all have different virtues and hierarchies of sins, and so on. I'm thinking about a Sabbat game, obviously. I cannot keep track of all of that while the player just shows up and expects me to know everything, especially his character build, right? And everything that entails. I am not a computer program that always runs morality checks in the backgrounds, remembering and taking into account all merits and flaws. If character lied to X and X is a clanmate according to player's path of morality, execute conviction roll and lose 1 point of path, otherwise resume immersive narration. I am not code. I'm a human being. And tabletop RPGs, while they are games, they are also collective storytelling experiences. They run on GMs and players, not computers or consoles. So Even the best GM does occasionally need help. They have an off day, they are tired running the game after who knows how many hours of work, and they come to the game expecting to also receive their share of fun, not to babysit and entertain disinterested, lazy players. So how does one go about helping the GM? Oh, well, I'm glad you asked that, my dear player. Here's exactly what you can do. Number 1, read the rules and settings. Other games don't do this much, the systems are independent of setting, but in World of Darkness games, settings are in the books. If your GM asks you to have a look through the book, do it. Like I said before, there is always a base amount of work and research that goes into playing an RPG successfully and to everyone's fun. Put in the work, at least the bare minimum stuff, at least enough that you can make a character by yourself and submit it to the GM for approval. Trust me, not only does this spare the GM having to babysit the player, but every time you ask your GM a question about what you've read in the book, it reaffirms that you are interested in the game and putting in the work, and that helps so much. Number 2, take and have notes on hand. If your character uses an ability, have a cheat sheet of rules you can go to on the spot. Maybe you are the only craftsman in your group, and the GM never had a craftsman character in their games before, so you can look up the rules, so they can look up the rules, but it will take time. So you having that cheat sheet on hand ensures that the immersion doesn't break completely as you maneuver through the rules and mechanics quickly. Also, if you hear something interesting, write it down. You will know it later, you can use it later, you can always remember, you can check your notebook really quick and remember who that NPC is. So everyone at the table doesn't need to stop and remind you who that character is or what that location was. So these two things, definitely, your GM will thank you for them because it keeps things immersive, runs through rules and mechanics quickly. Number 3, track your consumables. Hey, in combat, when everyone is spending blood left and right and physical stats are off the charts, your GM might not have the time to update his notebook of player character consumables. He is narrating some very aggressive and scary story moments, and he is probably excited but has a lot on his mind. So you, the player, keep track of your resources and mana or potions or whatever consumables you're working with. It's going to matter. Number 4, self-police your character's morality and transgressions. Ideally, the GM knows exactly when to ask for a conscience or conviction roll, but sometimes they are distracted. So after you've narrated how the transgression happens, because we always tell story first and mechanics second, right? You can remind your GM, hey, my path is against that kind of behavior, what I did just now. So do I roll conviction? Trust me, it helps out so much in the heat of good RP and interesting in-character conversations. And after all, you decided on your character's moral code, one path of many others. So please pay attention to it. And number 5, letting your GM know what you want from the game, what your character's goals are, and how the character intends to go about achieving them. This one is really important, so I will take a bit more time talking about this one. Maybe the player wants to overthrow the prince, but you as GM are not good at intrigue and politics. Should you disallow the character or ask the player to change his motivation? No, not at all. As long as the player has an idea about how the character will go about things, they can tell you all about it. And you, the GM, having more details and starting to understand just what the fun is going to be for that player and what means the character has at their disposal, you can bring the desired experience to life. as long as the dice are on the player's side, of course. Players, sometimes it's not enough to say, I want my character to gain status, or I want my character to learn this super exotic discipline throughout the game. GM, you do whatever you want, but that's what I'm expecting from the game. Alright, maybe the GM finds that too abstract, doesn't know what to do with it, but if you say something along the lines of, well, my character is going to be a bootlicking Camarilla do-gooder, but secretly they keep tabs on everyone else using different means, actively breaking traditions to get their information. After their blackmail list is big enough, they will start rubbing up against the Primogen and blatantly proposing they sabotage the prince's rule. If they don't cooperate, the character has enough material to blackmail and intimidate them for good measure. In the exotic discipline example, GM, I know this exists in the world of the game and my character shouldn't have access to that, but I am willing to risk the character's reputation and safety just to interact with a vampire who might, with the right motivation, teach me that discipline. Now, I know I might not get it, and that's super okay. My character will bring it up with a coterie and a few NPCs. They will bring up the fact that they have seen this discipline in action once, some time ago. It's in my backstory, and they're curious to know more about it. They're willing to offer services, exchange resources, or outright bribe anyone who can give them more information about this exotic discipline. So please consider. And there we have it. When the character's motivation is powerful and super important, don't just throw expectations at the GM thinking, well, they've ran this many games before, they can make it work. Instead, talk a little bit about why this is fun for you and how the character goes about their goal. And also what happens if they don't achieve their goal. Is that okay? And ideally, it should be fine because you never know how these things are going to play out. So it helps out a lot. The GM doesn't need to take shots in the dark, worrying about, oh, how will this impact the player? Will they dislike this profoundly? Will they? No, talk about it. And the more you know, everyone at the table will enjoy the chemistry and the beautiful interactions between the player and the storyteller. So to conclude, help out your storyteller. They are doing this for you to have fun. Don't make them feel like their minuses in terms of GMing technique are completely off-putting and irreparable, because then they will just shut down and stick only to what they know, offering the same experience for the same character archetypes time and time again. But games can be so much more and so much fun for everyone. If your GM doesn't know how to roll with an archetype, help them visualize the character and their means of interacting with the world, and that's bound to give them a few ideas at least. Be responsible for your character, do your reading, take notes, track your stats, police your character's morality and sanity, and ultimately, if a character is just beyond your GM's ability to work with, make a new one. If you help out your GM, everyone wins. Thank you very much for listening, and hopefully this will have made a few GMs' lives easier. Take care, have fun, and don't forget to play.